All right, happy Monday, buddies. You're watching MaddiE with MaddiE. I'm Matt Dawson. This is live, another live stream, episode number 43 of myViewoNBooks, which is basically a book show. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about Hard Times by Charles Dickens. I think this cover would not remind you about this book, but I have the book. Now you'll remember which is this book. This book was the one that was featured in John Black chapter 2. Do you remember? So it was used in that movie. I made that character Regina to read this book, and it made sense to me. I'll tell you in the end of the episode why I chose this book. I wanted that character to read a book, but then reading this book gave total meaning. It's related to a character as well, characterization. So yeah, and I finished reading that book. I was reading that book during the John Black shoot, and it took me another 2 weeks. I think last week I finished reading it. So yeah, this is the first. I mean, not first. I have read Charles Dickens' book. I think Oliver Twist. It was one of the academic books that you had to read and analyze. So I think I read it as part of school. Oliver Twist, if I'm not wrong. Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, right? I love that, and I still have the story in mind that is very inspiring for kids. And as you know, Charles Dickens lived in the 19th century, I think 1918th. So he wrote about the hard times. I mean, literally the lower societies, the lower end of the society where people are poor and how difficult for them to live among these ambitious and rich men, especially during the industrial revolution. So this book is also hi Sam Cruz. Cruz got transition. I don't know what you mean by that. So the story is, I think, trademark for him. Like people mention Charles Dick when they want to talk about the hardships undergone by the poor during the industrial revolution. So like a lot of things happened, right? Good things and bad things. But then the bad things are like people were used and not paid well or treated well, and there was this drastic, even now it's there, it can still relate to his stories. There's this drastic difference and distinction between the higher rich folks and the lower poor folks, and the setting of hard times is also similar. So there is a family, Gradgrin. It's difficult, so difficult to pronounce the names in this story, and also the English. He has written how the labor class speaks. They are not educated, right? So their English accent is completely different, and you need to go through like multiple times to understand their accent. And he's exactly written in, like, I don't know how he mentioned, like he's put in words how they speak, and that's really difficult. The Britain English itself isn't difficult, and then the people who are not educated, they speak in a very accent that is common everywhere, right? In any country, the uneducated folks have their own accent, and in especially here in England or old Britain. So the accent they speak is completely baffled. I mean, I couldn't read at all, seriously, to be frank. But then I got what these characters were saying. So it's just that the pronunciation is different, but you kind of get what they're talking or mentioning. So the family is Gradgrin. So he has a daughter and a son. Daughter name is Lousia, and son name is Thomas. The whole story is like three segments with 10 chapters to each of these segments. And the whole story, I would say, it concentrates on different characters, but the main or the lead characters are this brother and sister, Lucia Gradgrind and Thomas Gradgrind. So they love each other. So they have been brought up, or they have been brought up in a very regimented manner. No fun, only facts, facts. And you need to be rational. You should not be emotional. You have to be what do you say, don't waste time playing around or imagining. They can't even imagine. Imagine how, if you are put a restriction that you cannot imagine, you just have to study and learn the facts, become a good educated folk, and continue your life, do the same thing for your children. So they are very frustrated. So it's not like they've known. So once the story initially starts, like Lucia and Thomas are peeping inside a what do you call it? Circus, right? Circus tent. So they are just looking at what happening inside a circus along with other kids, and then Gradgrind and his friend, another important character, Josiah Bordenbury, Bodenby. It's difficult to pronounce. So they come looking around, and they when they see Lucia and Tommy peeking inside a circus, like they are so frustrated. How can you do that? The circus is not a place where you guys should be. And they're like 10, 12, and it's very natural for kids to be curious and having fun roaming around the streets, right? But they are not allowed to do that. So this is how they have been brought, like, orthodox with a lot of constraints. And this guy Josiah, I hate this guy. I mean, literally, if I watch a movie or if any actor acts in that, I'm gonna kill that actor. It's such a kind of character. So this Josiah Bodenby, I mean, it's difficult to pronounce these English names. So he's a guy like where his mother thrown him into the gutter, and he built himself. So the place where the story is happening is Coketown, and he always describes that smoke coming out of chimneys. So it's basically industrial revolution. There are lot of factories, and people who own the factories are the rich, and they control the whole society. So he's one of those characters. So he boasts, or he's pompous, showing off himself like, I was thrown into gutter and I built myself. I never had fun. I worked hard even your age. Like, he's that guy who keeps advising, right, just for any reason, or boast about himself. He's like 50 plus years old, and in the first segment where it's named as I think seeding, book the first sowing. So sowing means you are kind of grooming, setting a plan and grooming it, right? So in the first segment, the whole town is established and the characters are established. Tommy, Lucia is like young kids, teens literally, and then this Bodenbury, Gragrin. So these are the characters that are introduced. And immediately in the second segment, when Lucia turns 18, I think it's 18, 17 or 18, I don't know what was the age before this rule was set, right? 18 is the age for marriage, at least minimum age. It's in India, but in other countries it varies. So this rule was invented for a purpose and set in place for a purpose. So in those days, this rule was not there. So I think when Lucia turned 16 or 17, she is being married to this stupid, I don't want to say Josiah Burnby. So this guy is like 50 plus years old, and he marries Lucia, and Lucia has no other choice. Like literally, Lucia's grandfather and the mentor is Josiah, and when her father comes and asks her, she says that, you guys know what's good for me, so you guys decide what you want. I'll I'll abide by you. And it's like classic, what do you say, subdue what happened in the previous centuries, right? Women were not given a lot of choices. They were like forced to do stuff, and when they're literally seen as baby making missions. Like when they turn into the adult age, they are being married off to double their age. Like almost Lucia is like 17, 18, and this guy is like 50 plus, and they are married. Like so frustrated. I was in tears, and this story moved, the writing especially, not only the story, the way he writes it, right? So even now you can connect it. So like this 18-year-old girl is getting married to this 15-year-old pig, and she has no other choice. She's married, and she cares for her brother also. She thinks that his brother will get a job with him in the bank. So this Josiah Burnby works in the bank. He owns a bank and he owns a factory. So he's like a rich, powerful magnate, and that's the reason his father also, like, reasonably, he's a good man. I also married your mother when she was young. So he gives that as an excuse. So this is how the story moves, and in the end, it's kind of literally very sad, and how these two kids who are not allowed to be children or enjoy their life grow up and end up spoiling their life. So it's not their fault. It's the fault of the parents and these guys, right? Josiah Burnby and his father, their father. So the marriage doesn't work out. It ends up in break. I mean, Lucia comes back to her father's house. So there's another character who's trying to have an affair with Lucia, but then Lucia is moral enough to go to her dad and say that, you married me to Josiah, but then look at what happened. I don't know what to do. There's another guy asking for my hand, and I'm not going, but you tell me what to do. And she comes and stays in her father's house back. And Tommy becomes like a very notorious and naughty guy. He literally steals the bank, and he sets up another guy good labor. Stephen Blackpool is another character, and so it moves in a very emotional, dark manner, ends up in a very strong note where you feel that this world is so cruel to the people who doesn't have much power and who doesn't have much money. So the lower class are literally like cursed people. They are being they are being the suspects for everything, and they don't even have a peace of mind. Even though they don't have money or any good happy life, they are not even being allowed to have a peace of life. So Dickens is very famous for bringing out the lower, like showing the lower class people as the lower class people as the heroes and protagonists, their point of view until he his timeline. I think not many people have done. Like they've talked about kings, queens, political people, but never about a common man or especially a labor class. So this story was really emotional, and I literally had tears in many chapters, and the writing was so good. And as I said, it's like pure British novel. So, and then there's these labor class people are speaking in their own accent, street accent, I guess, without, they do not have education, right? So that's really difficult to understand, but then if you keep reading, I think you'll get it. So I was pretty impressed, and that's the reason I kept this book in John Black chapter 2, because Regina is not a very negative character, but then she's a character who's like rules, like she sets the rules and she wants them to be followed by her subordinates. Like she says that 7 minutes 17 seconds you have to take a stroll around the park and come back within that time, and you have to finish this task, it's your important assignment. So it made sense keeping this book, especially the first segment. It's like they literally talk about fact. There's one chapter describing Josiah Burnaby and Thomas Gregorian. So their nature, how strict and regimented they are, Martinent, and they do not have emotions. They have only rational thoughts, and they are just talking about facts. So if you ask a question, do you want to eat or not? If you eat, you will be alive. That's a fact. So you eat. It's not like you should eat for the taste or pleasure. You have to survive, so you have to eat. That's a fact, and you have to follow that rule. So that's how they live, with just facts, following facts, and it's a very extreme manner. Even though it's not bad, it's extreme. Like when you follow it to the extreme, it's going to be pretty bad for others around you. Look at how the daughter Lousia and the son Thomas turned out, spoiled. Literally, they spoiled. Like they were brought up in a very, very good manner, but they did not allow, they did not have the chance or opportunities or time to express themselves. Be childish and play around. So they were not allowed to do that. So it was like they were in that, and they became they were not even able to take their decisions. And this guy is like literally criminal. At the end of the story, he's a criminal. Thomas Gregorian, the son, Tommy. And it's very, 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 very sad. And yeah, that's why he named it Hard Times, I guess. Seriously. And John Black being a movie on time, the importance of time. So I thought it's title wise as well as story wise, it fitted Regina's character and the theme of the story. So I kept it in John Black. So I loved it. It's a good choice. And yes, so I'll try to keep, whenever possible, I'm going to keep a book as a reference in all my movies. So do read this. It's a very classic and famous novel. I think this also should be in the academics. I'm not sure. Oliver Twist is there, but then Hard Times, I'm not sure whether it was there. And I have fallen in love with this author, and I'm going to read Oliver Twist again, and then his masterwork is David Copperfield. I'm sorry for the rain. It's raining here. And yeah, I'm going to read about Copperfield, and definitely I'll all Charles Dickens book, I'm going to talk about it. Let's read. Like, I'm a rogue got transitional skills. Please explain what is transition skills. Well, the transition I know is scene to scene transition in movies. I just meant the snap. Oh yeah. Okay, snap was good. Oh, you love the snap? Let me do one again. How's that? One more. Hey, it's good, nah? Man, we have a short version of the story. Oh, okay. I think short version in the sense abridged. Abridged version, I think abridged version is If you see in the cover, it's written complete and unabridged. So abridged means cut short or removed. Some critical parts or controversial parts are removed. So maybe your story was in the school that you had was abridged. But definitely go read. You will develop a sense of emotion, like how the poor class already they are poor and they're struggling a lot in their life, and then again these rich folks are manipulating them and playing with them, and then within the rich folks circle only there are like spoiled faces like Lousia, Thomas. So the centuries have changed. So it happened in 18th or 19th, but then in 21st century also same thing happening. So you can relate it. Just the technology, science has improved, but then the hard times still remain. And it's an emotional, moving story. Do Let me read some quotes. I have already done the yeah. So this is a scene in the first segment where they are teen, kids, almost like kids, between teen and kids stage, and so it's like a foreshadowing of the marriage that's going to happen between Josiah, a 50-year-old, and then Lucia, who's like turned 18 or 17. So they are their mentor. So right now, Josiah Bornby is the mentor of the two kids, Tommy and Lucia. So whenever he's coming home, he'll ask some questions, and if they answer correctly, he'll kiss both of their cheeks. And this time, he's kissing Lucia cheeks, and this is how she feels. He went his way, but she stood on the same spot, rubbing the cheek he had kissed with a handkerchief until it was burning red. She was still doing this 5 minutes afterwards. So he asked a question to Lucia, and Lucia answered it, and then he kissed and he went. So Lucia doesn't like that, and she keeps rubbing it with handkerchief in way too extreme way that it has become red even after 5 minutes. So yeah, so this is like foreshadowing. I thought, no, I didn't, but I didn't exactly believe that he's gonna marry her, because at this instant Lucia is like 10 or 12, and then this guy is like 45 plus and all. So never thought that they're gonna be getting married. So but when I came to that chapter, I was like, oh my god, this is bullshit. There are people who are not married yet, and then this guy is marrying like a 17, 18 old. So I mean, people who are like 40, 30, 20s, even 20s, people are not married and they're looking for marriage, a bride and all. This guy is married in the story. This guy is marrying a like just 18 or 17 turn girl. It's like bullshit, seriously. I was so enraged, but then that's how the story is, right? So it was true. Back in 18th and 19th century, everywhere it was predominant. Kings used to marry a lot of brides, from different countries or kingdoms, and they were allowed to have multiple wives, numerous wives. So women were seen as a kind of, what do you say, a tool, baby making tool. And so like especially the last few centuries, the woman empowerment has come up and has improved. We are seeing them as equals, and it's still a lot of way to go. Especially when you see Me Too movement and all, you believe that okay, still we have some faith, and I am especially I'm firm believer that if you have seen my movies, right, I try to treat a woman equally. Like there should be, whatever the opponent, they should be equal, and characterization is important, whether it's a male or female. Good characterization is important in stories. The same applies to this life, right? So if you're living with another different species, you have to treat them equal, not only humans, every species. So yeah, but I'm going bad, like I've started advising like Josiah Burnby. So whatever your opinion you hold, make sure it's good enough for others, and do read this book, Hard Times by Charles Dickens. And snapping will do, since Santa Cruz likes snapping. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I love talking about this book, and I'm going to read one Charles Dickens novel once a year. So for this year, I finished his quota, Hard Times. Next, I'll pick up Oliver Twist or David Copperfield. Okay. Yes, as usual, the schedule will go. Tomorrow we'll have a gaming stream, but because of the rains, I'm not sure. Power cuts are happening. Right now, there's a power cut. And then Wednesday I want to do a movie talk episode. So I'm going to talk about a Jim Carrey movie. Surprise, which movie? I mean, I'm sure most of you would have not heard this movie. It's a very unique and underrated, less heard movie of Jim Carrey. So I'm gonna talk a movie, Jim Carrey's movie on Wednesday, and as usual gaming, and then Friday we'll have a movie. See you until next episode. You're watching Medley with MaddiE. I am MaddiE Dawson. It's raining hard here. Bye bye.